This month, the greatest returned to the top. Simone Biles, the GOAT, the greatest gymnast of all time, was back on the floor. With poise and showmanship, she perfectly landed the difficult double-double. You could see in her face she was having fun. And on her last pass on the floor X, she hit a double layout and floated down, winning her 8th U.S. National All-Around Championship. It was a thrilling, triumphant return. The last time she competed, it was a completely different story. It was 2 years ago at the Olympics, where she had the hopes of our entire country on her shoulders. How many medals would she win? Could she lead the U.S. to the team gold? We never found out. Because day after day she announced that she would not be competing. She was derided by critics as being a quitter, of taking a spot on the team from someone who would have competed, and even of costing the U.S. the team gold. But in the days and weeks that followed, it became clear what Simone Biles' reason for withdrawing was: her mental health. Biles had been experiencing the twisties, a psychological reality that causes gymnasts and other aerial athletes to lose their orientation midair. Without instinctually knowing whether she was right side up or upside down, the consequences of competing could have been catastrophic. Overcoming the twisties is not something that a few extra sessions of training can do, because the cause in Biles' case was tied up with something deeper: her mental health and well-being. The extraordinary pressure to perform at the highest levels, combined with trauma and abuse that she had experienced at the hands of a predatory team doctor, upended her mental state. It took 2 years of work for her to recover. But as the Washington Post editorial board recently put it, putting her mental health first, Simone Biles stuck the landing. She sacrificed potential historic glory to manage her mental health challenges, including anxiety and depression. What we learn from Simone Biles is it's okay not to be okay. But Simone Biles is Simone Biles, and none of us are Simone Biles. We look up to her, but I'm frankly more interested in the experience of everyday people. I'm going to try an experiment. If you were born between January 1st and May 26th, please raise your hand. Keep your hands up, look around the room, and see all the hands that are in the air. May 26th is the 146th day of the year. It is exactly 2/5 of the way through the year. 2 and 5, hands up. Almost done, I promise. 2 and 5 is also the number of American adults who experience some form of mental health issue. The number of hands in the air is a good estimate of the number of people in this sanctuary today who experience anxiety or depression. You can put your hands down. Some have confronted this reality and are taking active steps to improve our mental health. But too many of us are not. The reasons are many, but my prayer for us this year, for this congregation and this community, is that this new year is the year that we are all able to name when we are not okay and do the work to improve our mental well-being. Imagine for a moment that all those peoples with their hands in the air were walking around this room with open wounds, broken limbs, sneezing, coughing, shivering from fever chills. If 250 people in this room were that sick and that injured, we'd be saying, what in the world is going on? We would want to rush them to hospitals and to urgent care centers, desperately seeking to ease their pain and suffering. We would know that recovery from those wounds would take time and patience, medicines, therapeutic treatments. We wouldn't expect them to just heal on their own. Alongside the clearly wounded might be other folks with the nagging physical ailments, the sore muscles and joints, the tight backs and sensitive stomachs that come with decades of life. I turned 40 this year, and I can say this is something that I am starting to live with, and I imagine many of you have or are learning to do so as well. So we do more stretches. We buy antacids in bulk. Thank you, Costco. We expect a day of recovery after just a few hours of playing pickleball. But being attuned to our physical limitations and ailments is something that most of us do so easily. Doing the same for our mental health is not. Injuries and illnesses of our mental health are just as real and require just as much, if not more, attention. But for too long and for too many, the pain and suffering of mental health challenges, of anxiety, depression, emotional trauma have gone undiagnosed, untreated, and honestly unacknowledged. The American Psychiatric Association suggests that more than half of people with mental health concerns don't receive the support and treatment that they could help them. Why not? Well, for some, it's a challenge of access. They don't have the time, the money, or the ability to get in with a qualified professional. And for some, it's a combination of all three. But for many, too many, the reason is simple: stigma and shame. People are afraid to acknowledge that they might need some help. They are afraid of their friends turning their backs on them. They are afraid of losing their jobs if their bosses find out. They are afraid of people thinking less of them because they can't handle what life throws at them. This stigma around recognizing one's mental health concerns resonates with men who are less likely to seek treatment because it conflicts with that strong, independent masculinity that is so prevalent in our society, and with women who've been socialized not to prioritize their needs for fear of being a bother to others, for fear of what others might think of us if we recognize the emotional pain we live with. Feelings of shame push us to deny that we have it, put it out of our minds, and carrying it subconsciously. We are simply too afraid to say that we need help, that we are not okay. Even God struggles to admit to having emotions. Throughout most of our tradition, God is presented as all-powerful, almighty, infallible, all-knowing. On no day is that truer than today. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Hadin, the day of judgment. On this day full of awe, we described and declared how God, who created us and the entire universe, chooses and inscribes the fate of all humanity and even the heavenly hosts. When we read the words of Unatana Tokef, it's deeply stressful for us, but we are told that God comes easily to these decisions about our fate. But in one passage of the Talmud, we get a glimpse of a God struggling with emotions. The prophet Jeremiah once said, "But if you will not hear it, my soul shall weep in secret for your pride." To which Rav Papa reminded us that in all other parts of the Hebrew Bible that describe God as full of majesty, of strength, of judgment, that God of Rosh Hashanah, which seems to suggest that sadness is not something that God ever experiences. But the rabbis of the Talmud pick up on the fact that God cries in secret. Usually Rav Papa is right, and God does behave in the unflappable fashion of Unatana Tokef. But there are times when even God retreats into secret places to cry. The image of God sitting alone, crying in sadness, can teach us that if it's okay for God to push through the shame and stigma of anguish, of course we should do so too. If it's okay for God not to be okay, it's okay for us not to be okay. So what do we do when we realize we are not okay? God chose to sit alone and cry, but that's because God can't get a therapist. But we can. And it's easier now more than ever. Before the pandemic, finding an affordable, available therapist was a challenge. But with our society's newfound comfort with telehealth, there are resources like BetterHelp, which offers affordable out-of-pocket virtual therapy appointments, or Grow Therapy. This is great. It will match patients with an in-network therapist that will take their insurance. This access is better than before. Wait times of weeks or months to see someone have turned into same-day and next-day appointments. Without access to a therapist, too many people are relying on those closest to them, like a spouse or a best friend, to take the burden of the emotional and mental loads that we all have. But now, not only is it easier to talk to someone online, we are beginning to learn that teletherapy might even be more effective than in-person therapy, in part because it is so easy to access. We're able to get better quicker, and better quicker is better. At the extreme end of the mental health crisis, we have seen a steady increase in suicides across the nation. It's painful to think or even talk about. Sadly, we've experienced it even here in our own congregation. But last summer, the new 988 Lifeline debuted, a simple number to call or refer people to if they are having thoughts of suicide. Like 911, it is a number we should all know, 988. Hopefully, a resource like this will prevent further tragedies. And you never know when you might have the chance to save someone's life by giving them that number, 988. Here at Temple Bethel, we are especially aware of the challenges that our kids and families face. For years, we've developed our relationship with the Ruth and Norman Rails Jewish Family Services, providing a social work support to our families. But this year, and much credit goes to our Temple's Director of Education, Heather Erez, for making this happen. We now have a JFS social worker on site whenever religious school is in session to support our students, their families, and our teachers. Opening ourselves to our emotions, engaging in talk therapy, asking a social worker for guidance are great things for confronting the issues that have arisen. But the bigger question, the biggest question, is why is all of this happening? Why are there so many more people experiencing mental health issues? Well, each person's story is unique. There is something that has come up over and over again: loneliness and lack of meaningful connections. Niobe Way is a world-renowned psychologist who spent the last 35 years studying how lack of relationships can have devastating effects on people's well-being. She put it bluntly: the mental health crisis is a symptom. It is a symptom of the crisis of connection. Work like hers has shown that not having people we are close to and can count on affect how we face life's challenges, big and small. One study showed that people perceive a hill in front of them to be less steep if a good friend is standing next to them. Going all the way back to the 1980s, to which my kids is ancient history, research has shown that people who have a warmer, closer connection have lived longer, developed the diseases of middle age, those chronic diseases, less soon, and had better health longer on average than those who don't have warm, close relationships. As Dr. Way put it, decades of research have revealed the critical nature of relationships and communities. Our social and emotional needs are not simply feel-good issues. They are matters of life and death. If building and maintaining bonds of connection to others is one of our strongest tools to maintain our mental health well-being, then you are all in the right place. Being a part of this community is literally life-saving. That is what this synagogue, community, and congregation is for. More than just holding worship services or offering educational opportunities, this congregation exists to bring people together with love and compassion and deep connection to one another. Our circles and chavarot, sisterhood, brotherhood, parenthood, parent tribe, our youth engagement efforts all exist so that everyone who is a part of this community feels that sense of safety and belonging. I know I speak for my colleagues in the clergy and the professional staff when I say that we wake up every day hoping that we can make you all feel better about your lives because of the experiences you have here. This is a place where we hope you feel great. But if you don't, we want to be there and help. Rosh Hashanah is a day for wake-up calls. It is a day on which we envision the year to come and set a course for a year better than those that have passed. My prayer for all of us in this year 5784 is that it be a year of health and prosperity. May we shed the shame and not fear the wounds that we cannot see, so we can pursue health and well-being. May the blasts of the shofar remind and inspire us that when we feel our mental health is in jeopardy, we should have the courage to say, it is okay to not be okay. Shabbat Shalom, Shana Tova.